Hallo, guten Tag. Hope you're all having a great day so far. I was sitting around trying to think of new and interesting video ideas, and I was remembering back to watching some of fellow synth YouTuber Alex Ball's videos, specifically the ones where he would focus on effects like compressors and delays. And I was thinking it would be interesting if I focused on something like that for a video. So this video is going to be about one of my favorite types of effects, gain. So there are a bunch of different types of gain effects ranging from mild and very satisfying saturation to wild and destructive distortion. Most of my songs, honestly, I use a whole bunch of different plugins to get a lot of different kinds of effects. So I thought it would be fun and interesting to do a video where I dive into how I've used them, how one could use them, and maybe explore some new ways of using them, some unique and interesting and creative ways of using gain effects like saturation and distortion and overdrive and stuff like that. So let's go from, I guess, lowest intensity to highest intensity. Of course, it's very subjective. It depends on the extent to which you are going to be using each of these effects. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of overlap from mild stuff to really like crushing, destructive stuff. But we're going to go with how I generally use each one. So let's jump over to the computer and I'll show you what I got.
Alright, so as far as really mild saturation goes, I usually use two different plugins, and those are this one called Saturation Knob, and then this one called Black Box HG2, and it actually has two versions. It's got a regular stereo version, and it also has a version that has mid-side processing as well as left and right. Starting with Saturation Knob, it's insanely simple to use. Obviously, it's just one knob and then the saturation type, which I usually like to keep to neutral, and it generally yields really satisfying results. I like to use it on everything from drums, just a little bit of extra punch and defined attack, to whole mixes. Like, I'll put it on my master to just get kind of a combination of soft clipping and level maximization. I feel like in that use case, it gives the whole mix a very analog vibe. Like, the whole thing was just mixed on an old analog mixing console where clipping actually sounds good when done correctly, as opposed to digital clipping, which sounds terrible. I mean, of course, you can crank this little unit and get some absolutely nasty sounds, but I generally just don't use it that way. Not because it doesn't sound good, but just because that's not how I tend to use it. Black Box HG2 is pretty similar as far as the extent to which I use its saturation, though its interface has a lot more options, obviously. It almost has like some EQ options and some more options for specific tube settings. So you can really fine tune exactly how you want your saturation to feel. And like I said, there's also the mid-side and left-right version of this plugin that makes stuff just sound completely huge. And it lets you apply different saturation to either the left, right, or mid-side channels, which is pretty cool for making, just like I said, massive sounds. Alright, so here I have my drum kit, and I have neutron elements just going compressor and a really mild equalizer, and then I have it going through Saturation Knob, and I'll run through how I would use Saturation Knob and then both of the Black Box HG2 plugins. So yeah, you can hear how each one affects the sound and makes it just a little bit, a little different, just different flavors of saturation. But yeah, I didn't go too crazy on it. I just wanted some nice, mild, little crunchiness to the drums. I thought that sounded pretty good. All right, so the next item up on the ladder as far as intensity goes would probably be one of my favorite plugins of all time. This is Phil's Cascade by Elysia. This plugin is actually modeled after a hardware unit filled with tons of strange tubes and other components that was actually built for the purpose of being modeled in software form. Like, it was just built to be modeled. It has so many strange features you just wouldn't really find on any other saturation plugins, like a bias knob and a grid knob and a resonant filter. Again, completely depends on how much gain you want, but this plugin can go from really nice mild saturation to absolutely demolishing your track in seconds. I love it. I like to use this plugin specifically in combination with bass synths because I feel like it just adds a little extra juice. The resonant filter can turn a tame, kind of boring, bland bass line into a beautiful, squelchy, distorted acid mess. Needless to say, I'm a huge fan. Take a listen. Here I have Kinephonium running into it. This is another Plugin Alliance thing. This is also modeled after a piece of hardware. This is modeled after the real-life Kinephonium, which is like a 25-tube analog synth, and it sounds super good. But right now I just chucked a bass line into it, and I'm feeding that into Phil's Cascade. So I'm gonna start at default settings, and then I'm gonna go a little crazy with it. So yeah, that turned a little crazy pretty quickly. That sounds really, really good. I love this thing. I use it a lot. And obviously I don't always use it to that extent. Like that's a little harsh, but I do use it a lot for a lot of different ranges of saturation. But I think I gotta say my favorite thing that it does is that like disgusting, squelchy, distorted, nasty kind of thing. I love that. All right, and finally, the most intense top of the Distortion ladder plugin is iZotope's Trash 2. This plugin is really something special. It's got all the features that you would expect on a Distortion and more. So it's got filters and dynamic shapers and convolution, you name it. You can individually change the intensity of the wave shaping with this fancy little XY graph here. You can adjust the preamp and the drive and the gain and a whole bunch of fun stuff. But I think the most important part of this plugin to me, and the origin of almost all of its utility, is just the massive library of all these different drives and distortions and wave shaping options that it has. This distortion can sound like no other just because of the fact that it has so many algorithms, and they all sound wildly different from one another. And each has the potential to destroy your signal in new and different ways that you wouldn't have even thought of. Like, seriously, I will use this plugin pretty often as kind of a form of additive synthesis, rather than having its primary goal be to distort the signal. This is really the only plugin on this list where your dry signal and your wet signal can have, like, absolutely no resemblance of each other. Like, seriously, I've thrown Trash 2 on tracks before, messed with it for long enough that I, forgot what the original sounded like, and then muted the plugin and been, like, entirely confused at how I got the wet signal from the dry signal. It's like, how did I get here? For example, here's an instance where the input sounds like nothing like the output. Here's without trash. And here's with trash. Yeah, there's a reason why Trent Reznor loves this plugin. Alright, I hope that was interesting and inspiring to you all, and you can go and create new and different things. Gain plugins are really a magical thing, and you can get some amazing results from using any of the ones I just listed, or any others you can find, honestly. I think you can't really go wrong with saturation or gain or distortion. There's no bad distortion. I think it's all in how you use it, and if you are figuring out ways to use it uniquely. I think listening to a lot of 90s industrial rock music is a prime example of that, of pushing equipment to its limits and making something sound conventionally bad, but making it sound good to you by using stuff like saturation and distortion, a lot of that. I think it's really evident in a lot of that music, like 9 Inch Nails. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of music production videos in the future. I'd really like to get kind of more into that area of music. And if you really liked it, you can subscribe to my Patreon, where I have after-show content and early music updates and a whole bunch of other exclusive stuff that's really awesome. Now, before you click off, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's only $1 a month or $5 a month if you're really dedicated. And like I said, there's a whole bunch of cool content on there, like after-show stuff, behind the scenes, early music updates, song demos, tons of cool stuff. A little goes a long way to support me,
and you get extra content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tschüssi!